Google sir, let us start. I think it is
All
already
right.
36. So let us start this.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to all of you to this very important webinar on the applicability of the revised IGCR rules. This program was scheduled for 15, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, we had to postpone it to today. So we are grateful to all of you to come today on a Saturday, and special thanks to our guest speaker, Mr. Anant Radhakrishnan, who is the brain behind these IGCR rules. So there cannot be a better person than him to speak on this subject. We have him with us. We are thankful to you, sir, and especially to come on a Saturday to attend the important sector like gem and jewelry and address their burning issue of this IGCR rules so that everyone can understand their applicability. We are also thankful to Mr. Samir Patil, the OSD and technical officer in the TRU section, who has worked closely with Mr. Anant to frame these rules. And we have with us Mr. Supreme Kothari, who is our consultant on this subject in the council, and of course our executive director, Mr. Sabyasachi Ray, under whose guidance this program is being organized. We are thankful to the participants who bore with us, and on 15th they did join, around 140 of them, and we had to postpone for some unforeseen circumstances. We are thankful to them. We apologize for this delay. And sir, in our sector, the IGCR rules were not applicable at all earlier. When the CEPA was introduced and there was the provision to import gold under the TRQ with 1% duty concession, the applicability of IGCR rules for the TRQ import under CEPA was sort of administered. As a result, since the members were not aware of the intricacies of these rules, and since these rules were not allowing job work, and whereas in our sector, more than 90% of the manufacturing is done through job work, we in the council had requested FOC and DGFT and the revenue department, and sir, we had met you a couple of times to see if the applicability of the rules for job work can be waived for our sector. And we had pursued with you, and you had assured that the job work will be allowed. And thereafter, we had a webinar which the Ministry of Commerce had organized on the FAQs and the various, conditions under which these rules were to be applicable or not to be applicable. This was held on 16th August, wherein you had informed that job work is permissible, will be permissible, and that very soon a concern notification circular will be issued. Now, on the 9th of September, the revised IGCR rules have been issued, and a corresponding circular giving details of the applicability of various rules for our sector has also been issued. But however, in the revised notification, whereas we were only, looking for the IGCR rules as far as the import of gold from UAE is concerned under CEPA, we now find that the IGCR rules have been made applicable for the import of gold for export under notification number 56 and 57. So that has a very wide implication, and in our sector especially, where almost 90% is unorganized, doing job work, and as of now they were not having any kind of compliances for IGCR rules. Suddenly they will be required to maintain a lot of records and follow. So this had resulted in some ambiguity and some the members were not aware as to what we should do, ignorance of this. So we thought we should have this program today and hear from you as to how the rules will affect our sector and what all is required to ensure that we follow the rules. So we are thankful to you, sir. And with this, I would request our Executive Director, Shri Sabyasachi Ray, to supplement and say a few words before we formally start.
Thank you, Mr. Duggal. And this is, of course, first I would like to thank Mr. Anant Radhakrishnan, the Deputy Secretary, and also Mr. Samir Patil, the technical officer and OSD in the TRU, the revenue department. So this is, of course, a very unique opportunity for the council, and council has always tried to see that we hear from the government itself when some notification or some regulations come, and we were successful in earlier cases also. Mr. Sikar Reddy came, then Mr. Moin Afaq came. So like that, so it is always for the members, it is beneficial to understand right from the authority, and they can meet the authorities directly. And open house is one of the concepts that government right now is propagating in a big way. So the government is coming to the public. So that way, I am thankful that the officers are there itself who have formulated and who have formulated this regulation. They are themselves to answer the queries from the members directly. And we have also Supreme, because Supreme was also working with us with regards to representing to the government wherever there are challenges in terms of regulation. So he will be briefing wherever he believes that there can be regulation down the line in application from the members side, basically from the council side. And also I request all the members who have joined today's webinar in terms of participation, if you have any question, please address that from the Q&A, that chat box. You will be putting that there, and Supreme will be following those questions. And after Mr. Radhakrishnan and Mr. Samir Patil finishes their explaining of the entire thing, then we will take up each of the questions one by one, where our honorable officers can respond to such questions wherever possible. So, and if there is any ambiguity, they will also try to address that. So this is how the format, how we'll be following that. And Supreme will just give the legal background why the officers are here in very short format, so that we can start, so everybody is in the same page. Supreme, you can take over.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So essentially, there are two things that we are going to deal with. Obviously, everyone will have their inputs and all, but the first aspect is in relation to the India-UAE CEPA. So there, obviously, there was a requirement in terms of IGCR that was made applicable to the imports that are made under the TRQs that are issued to the jewelers. Now, in relation to that, what essentially the new IGCR rules do, obviously, job work is something that is getting curtailed, and job work is something that is now being allowed pursuant to the clarification that has been issued. Second aspect, which I would also request the speakers to touch upon, is the factor that now, since IGCR rules have expanded their ambit to beyond manufacturing of post-import product, and it also applies to an end user recipient. Because of that, can the earlier issue, or there was some discussion in relation to whether the importer, being the nominated agency, supplies the gold to the TRQ holder, that itself becomes compliance of the IGCR rules, or there's anything beyond required in terms of end use or in terms of usage in manufacturing because of the implication of the new IGCR rules. That is one thing that we'll have to look at. Secondly, as Dugalji also mentioned, now the historic notifications 56 of 2000, 57 of 2000 were operative for long, and there was no change in the modalities per se. Some amendments here and there obviously were there. But now with this IGCR rules becoming part of 56 of 2000 and 57 of 2000, what in your view is going to change in terms of how a jeweler who is going to export jewelry out of gold imported and bought from a nominated agency has to look at in terms of compliance, in terms of ensuring that there is no lapse, so there's no gap. So these are the two broad, I think, aspects that we'll have to look at. But obviously, the speakers, will have the liberty to touch upon other aspects which they consider relevant. But just from a context setting perspective, I thought these two issues would be relevant. Maybe now, the speakers can take over and, they can enlighten the audience in relation to, what all implications would arise. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everybody. I think thanks to, am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Dugalji, for your kind words. Only one small correction in this, where the brainchild of this specific change was Samir Patil. So, with respect to 57 and 56. So, okay. Yeah. So, I think Supreme had set the context. So, I'll take a very brief overview. So we can devote more time for question and answer. So that will be very
Yeah, that will be fine, sir.
fruitful
You
way
can
of
just explain
discussing things.
and then we
Yeah.
can have questions.
Yeah. So as you would have seen the circular 16 of 2022, which explains the changes, it has gone beyond the scope of manufacturing. So anything which is dealing with supply or anything which deals with end use, which is given in the notification, will also be covered in the notification IGCR rules. IGCR rules is essentially a procedure to monitor post import. Let us say if there are some obligations which are cast on certain importers regarding the post-import conditions, those how can we electronically monitor is what IGCR does it. So it is as simple as that one. And the scope is limited to what is prescribed in the notification. So I'm just emphasizing this because in UAE CEPA, the notification says that it should be supplied to TRQ holder. So when a nominated agency imports the gold and he declares saying that this is for TRQ holder, and still it is with the nominated agency, but he quotes a TRQ holder's license and he gets a duty concession. So when it gets transferred through to TRQ holder, then that's an end of a process. And IGCR is only to monitor that it is going to the rightful hands where which is declared in the declaration. So that's it. So what TRQ holder does with it, whether he manufactures it, whether he sells it again, or whether he does a job work, everything, it is out of purview of IGCR till because the notification says it should be available to TRQ holder. So the mechanism which has been drawn is that nominated agency will import it and will supply it. So moment a nominated agency has a supply made in accordance with GST rules and they declare it in the IGCR monthly statement. So that will be end of it. After that, nothing with respect to the UAE CEPA. So that's I think we have clarified in the circular as well that the IGCR rules will apply only till the supply which is there. Of course, when we come to other notifications which have been recently added to IGCR procedure like 57 and 56 and 57, I think Samir will be best person to explain it. But what I would say is that it is restricted to what is prescribed in the notification. And we have clarified it, amplified it again and clarified in the circular as well that when importer is there, the IGCR rule says he can't do a job work. That is, importer is nominated agency who is an importer is going to import it and supply to a exporter. So that can't be, there cannot be a job work to that one. But the job work for end use recipient, we have clarified that that is not the intent. So the end use recipient who is receiving the goods, he can do a job work and he has a responsibility to see that it is exported within the time frame given. Of course, we have also modified the IGCR rules to say that if there is any specific time period which is given in the notification, that will prevail rather than the 6 months time period which is given in the circular. So these are the key aspects which I wanted to clarify to this one. The more why IGCR rules in the circular is that we need to have an electronic way of accounting things, while customs has to have an effective way of monitoring it, but that can't be paper based, and it will be purely whoever has is dealing with IGCR will know that everything has right from your intimation. It's a true sense intimation such that you once you record it in your system, then that's it. There is no approval process which is required. Even for the bond submission, if at all it is there, also that you can submit everything online, only that you have to present the bond to one office, and it is going to be a national bond across India. So you give one bond to an IGCR jurisdictional officer, that bond will be applicable wherever you make an import across India. So, and you can submit a monthly statement. Once a monthly statement is given, automatically there will be a recredit of bond automatically. It can be done partially also. Let us say, earlier, if one bill of entry is there, till that bill of entry, all the quantity is, you are able to give a proof of thing you may not be in a position to do, even though there is a partial recredit. But I get a feedback saying that there is a problem in recrediting the bond for an entire bill of entry. But this IGCR procedure will give us a thing saying that if there is one bill of entry and you have imported 100 kgs of gold, and you are able to give a proof of export, let us say within 1 month for 50 kgs of gold. So you can do a recredit for 50 kgs of gold immediately. You need not wait for another 50. So another 50 can come in the remaining time period, which is
Very good.
So that is the key aspect of IGCR rule. So while we have an effective monitoring mechanism, it gives a lot of facility for an importer, for an stakeholder, and the export shipping bills will be also made part of a monthly statement. So you can validate whether that shipping bill indeed exists and whether it was used once, used again. So all those checks and balances will be built in the system, so that same shipping bills cannot be used multiple times. So that it gives a lot of confidence in the ecosystem, and that is the ultimate goal of having an IGCR procedure into this notifications. So with this one, I will stop here. I will ask Samir to explain more on this notification 56 and 57. So once that is there, then we can open the forum for question and answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anand. Thank you for setting the tone and explaining the entire IGCR rules in a very brief and easy manner. I think everybody would have understood. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Anand sir. Thank you, Dugal sir, for your inviting me. Anand sir, it is always enjoyable to work with you. And you have explained most of the things. I don't have much to add, but I just touch upon some of the aspects. Like I would like to tell what is the intention of the government behind applying IGCR rules to notification 56 and 57. The current process is like that when importer imports gold duty free and exports equivalent amount of gold in the form of jewelry, there is a physical reconciliation of imports with the exports, and because of that, field officers are not able to reconcile that what has been imported and what exactly has been exported. That's the problem at the level of field officers, custom field officers, and because of that problem, the bonds are not getting recredited, and the amount in the bond is getting stuck up. And in this regard, 2 months back, there was a meeting which was conducted by the Mumbai Chief Commissioner along with the trade. And obviously the trade and the nominated agency in this regard requested that there could be a digital reconciliation of import and export, since bill of entry and shipping bill are already there in the system. So why can't there be a mechanism through which digitally there could be information which can be given by the importers about the import, and after the exports, that shipping bill could be linked to the import which has already happened. And since IGCR is already there and it exactly actually tries to accomplish the same thing, there is a thought process in the government now that such end-use exemptions should be monitored through IGCR. So at the level of actual manufacturers and exporters, there was a compliance. There is a compliance right now that they have to give all this information of exports to nominated agency, and then nominated agency will provide this information to customs officer, and they will reconcile imports with exports. So in IGCR, there is not much change. The only change is that there would be now electronic portal through which nominated agency will reconcile imports with the exports, and the actual exporters and jewelry manufacturers will provide this information to nominated agency the way they are currently doing it. So procedurally, there is not much change. The change is only about the digitization of imports and exports, which will help in partial credit and automatic credit of the bonds. And about the job work thing, I would like to mention that currently gold imports are canalized. Canalized, it means that you can import gold only through nominated agency. And it is not the intention that nominated agencies themselves do the job work. They should further supply to actual manufacturers and exporters. That's why job work is not allowed to nominated agency. They need to supply it further. So the obligation of job work, not doing job work, is only on the importers who are nominated agency. The exporters who are receiving the gold from nominated agency, who are importers from the customs point of view, they can do the job work further. So this is actually an enabling provision. It should not happen that tomorrow nominated agencies themselves are doing job work and not supplying gold further. In that context, I would like to say that job work is allowed at the level of exporters who are getting the supply of gold from the importers who are nominated agency. That is what I can say about this thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patil. And before we take questions, Savitaji, you have anything to say? Or I had 2 points in my mind.
Yes, I have one point. So that, when it came and the way I have read it, one thing what Mr. Samir has also, clarified. So I want to clarify further is that, see, the job work will be the issue what our people will be facing. There are two issues what we want to address is at the nominated agency level, the compliance still now under the Customs Act is for the nominated agency, because what we are facing in a lot of cases, in case of exporter ultimately does some malpractice or etc., then the nominated agency are being called etc. That because they are told that as you have imported in the bill of entry, the compliance is with you. But with IGCR rules now to place, whether they can be given exemption from that, because ultimately they give they are only a distributor of the gold. The usage of that gold is not in their hand. So it now adequately clarifies that the usage, the responsibility lies upon the manufacturer. So whether based on that they can be exempted from those provisions whereby they were called for investigation and they were penalized, all these things are there. There's a big thing what we are facing because of a lot of nominated agencies are withdrawing and there is a supply challenge in the market, number one. Number two is that the manufacturer or the exporter themselves do not manufacture. Exporter again gives it down the line to the job workers. And that job worker, as per Lahiri committee report, they have extensively studied the whole thing. That can be some 20 different kind of job workers also, because one jewelry can go to some 5, 6, 7 different kind of job working, and then only the jewelry gets ready, and then the exporter exports. So ultimately, the exporter may not be the manufacturer, but the job workers will be the ultimate manufacturer. Third thing is that in that kind of thing, it is not clear from the IGCR rules and the provisions and the notification what has come in, whether the exporter needs to register those job workers where he is issuing the gold, that is also required or not. These are the three things what generally I have got a feeling from the market, and from studying this, general clarity is not coming.
Sir, should I respond? Or?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. See, if you see the IGCR rules, this IGCR rules put major obligation on importers who are nominated agency for notification, let's say 56, 57 and UAE CEPA. So nominated agency need to make up for any shortfall of duty. So if tomorrow, if there is any shortfall of duty, customs officer will catch nominated agencies. That's first thing. Now, the kind of obligation now is on the end users, let's say exporters, in purview of IGCR rule is maintenance of records at their end that can be verified by the customs field officer as and when need arises. So, and if you see the definition of a job work, the definition of job work in IGCR rule makes it clear that this will apply to gold or let's say goods belonging to importer. Now, in case of 56 and 57, since nominated agencies are doing further supply of gold to exporters, that gold does not belong to them. That belongingness will come into place only when a particular importer is a manufacturer. That manufacturer has obligations related to such things, but not to exporters who are just receiving supply from importers in case of 56 and 57.
So just to add to what you have said, and maybe it could be a question as well. So for job work related transactions, in terms of the GST laws, already records are being maintained. So when goods go out to job worker, there are delivery challans, there's ITC 04 which is being filed. So there is already adequate documentation. So do you feel that that documentation itself is substantial or okay for complying with the IGCR rules for the jewelry manufacturer or the exporter rather, or there's anything in addition required because there is already adequate documentation of that transaction?
So I think, if you read the IGCR, IGCR only says you should maintain a document, and
Right.
it tags to the GST documents. It is not prescribing any new document apart from GST. It also lists down that your documentation should contain at least these details. So
Right.
it is not prescribing a format or anything, but these are the basic features. Let us say quantity given, quantity, other things. Those are the things which is saying that it is. I think
Sure.
GST law will comply with it. So we are not prescribing any
Sure.
new documents apart from GST. So that and
Right.
no special format is prescribed or anything. So whatever is given for GST, everything will suffice. You can just see that one. So IGCR only says that you should
Yeah, yes.
maintain all these things. So that I
Yes.
think
So
it does not put an additional burden. So it's a
correct.
same as that of GST.
Which is really good, sir. We really appreciate that because every jeweler then only needs to look at that requirement and assess whether the current documentation suffices that, and then that's it. So yeah, sure.
Mr. Anand, the biggest gain, I think, which I see from the exporters or from the manufacturers and the nominated agencies point of view is the discharge of bonds. It is going to be done electronically, and partial bond, it will facilitate that. So far, it was a very big bottleneck, as a result of which nominated agencies were hesitant to import. They were not importing gold. They were not supplying gold to the manufacturers and exporters because their bonds were getting stuck up. If the partial discharge of bond, as you are saying, happens and is done electronically, that will be the biggest gain and game changer for these IGCR rules. But I have one question, sir. In the notification number 47 and 48, which was issued on 7th of September, it is mentioned that the IGCR rules will be applicable from the 1st of October. Whereas the notification number 74 issued on 9th says the IGCR rules are applicable for the date of application of the gazette, which is 9th of September itself.
See, again, IGCR rule is only a procedure rules which tells us what is a procedure to comply with certain procedure prescribed by the notification. So UAE CEPA is already in place from 1st May onwards. So IGCR rule will will apply to those notifications. From 1st October, the changes which are prescribed to 47 of 2022 and 48 of 2022 will come into place. And if there are any new notifications which are coming, from the later date, it will apply there. So IGCR is notification is not an independent notification. It has to be read always with the notification which prescribes the compliance of this procedure.
Which means for CEPA import, it is applicable immediately, and for imports under 56 and 57 notification, it will be applicable from the 1st of October. Am I clear, sir?
Okay. Yeah, that is very clear.
All right.
Yeah.
So that is one which people wanted to inquire. They were inquiring and they wanted to know. That clear, sir. And we can take questions, Sabyasachi. There are 26 questions.
What I'll do, Supreme, you go one by one on the questions, and on behalf of the crowd, you can go on. The questions are there already. Some 28 questions are there.
Yeah. So, and I would just try to answer it if possible, and I'll pass it on to the panel wherever. So the first question is, if I'm an importer as a bullion dealer who imports through exchange, can I supply to a TRQ holder who is a manufacturer in-house or a manufacturer who gives for job work? So I suppose, the TRQ benefit can be availed directly only by the importer. It cannot be a domestic transaction where, a subsequent importer is conferring any benefit to a domestic buyer. So I guess that's quite basic. Job work and all, obviously now that becomes permissible. Otherwise, generally, because of the IGCR rules that have come. The second question is, we have our own factory as proof of being manufacturer. We submitted a CA certificate issue receipt voucher to factory, income tax return audit report showing nature of business, MSME certificate, but getting deficiency memo again and again. So essentially, I think the question is with regard to application for TRQ under the
That is for
India-UAE
DGFT.
CEPA.
That is for DGFT.
Yeah, so that is for DGFT, but I believe that as per the DGFT notification itself, if you provide GST related details or MSME certification, that should be enough. But obviously, we'll have to look at it individually. So we can just pass this maybe. How to apply online gold through TRQ, that again is DGFT, but that online, I think prescription is there clearly. There are guidelines that can be, I think, sent to that relevant member who has raised this query. I move to the next question. We are Sri Balaji Jewelers. We are presently procuring DTA export gold from the designated nominated agencies and would like to know whether IGCR is applicable to us. So, Mr. Radhakrishnan, maybe if you can take this up. So, what they're saying is that they are procuring domestic gold from designated nominated agencies. So, it might not be imported gold. So, in that case, whether IGCR would be applicable is the question.
So, if they are if they are availing a benefit under 56 or 57 of 2022, a 2000 notification, and they get a gold from the nominated agency, IGCR rule will be applicable to the extent maintaining the records.
Correct, because all nature of procurements from nominated agencies would be domestic only, because this is a domestic transaction essentially. Right, sir.
Yeah. So if they're going to fulfill under 57 or 56 of 2000, they have to maintain the records. To that extent, IGCR is applicable to them. They need not, file a monthly statement and all those things. So that is not applicable to them. That is for the nominated agency.
Right. So that is very clear. Moving to the next one. So there's a question, I think it's quite generic. What compliances to be followed by banks, importers and exporters? I think we have broadly touched upon that, and that requires no further detailing. The next question is, job work by domestic retailer will not be considered as manufacture. So I suppose they are talking about a situation again under the TRQ where the importer is essentially getting everything done through a job worker. So for qualifying under the TRQ, whether it will be eligible as a manufacturer. So I guess the answer to that would be yes, because essentially even job work is something that is carried out on behalf of the principal, and considering the structure of the industry, even the person who is sending it to the job worker should be deemed as a manufacturer. A lot of questions are basically in relation to TRQ. So
that I think we can take. They can ask separately to the council, and we can help them.
Yeah. The next question is, please clarify when gold is imported under TRQ and given for job work to different job workers for manufacturing, whether these workers have to be notified to DGFT. You have already answered that question. It's not required. So this question, can my firm in Dubai export gold to my firm in India, and can we then export after doing job work in India, or it has to be absolutely through the nominated agencies?
It has to be.
I don't think
there's already a provision for supply by foreign buyers under the FTP.
Correct. And if it's basically job work, then I think it would already get converted into jewelry form. Once gold is coming and there's a job work which has been undertaken, it will take color of a jewelry, and there's no restriction for jewelry exports.
What is the minimum amount we can buy from nominated agency? Generally, nominated agencies give in denomination of 1 kilo and above.
So I think most of the questions, as I see, are either in relation to job work to the extent they pertain to IGCR, which and I'm still going down, but I'm just ignoring those questions which are already answered.
Mhm.
So there's one question. I think there's some confusion because actually, if you look at the IGCR forms, in the forms there is a portion where job work related details have to be filled in. Okay, so there's one question that IGCR forms requires filling up data regarding job work for TRQ. If the nominated agencies are not supposed to maintain the job work data, how the IGCR form is to be filled in? So this, if Mr. Radhakrishnan or Mr. Patil, if you can just look at this question.
Yeah, just to clarify, IGCR is applicable to what is specified in the notification. UAE CEPA notification specifies that the nominated agencies have to only supply to the TRQ holder. So that is an obligation. Once it is, received by the TRQ holder, how the TRQ holder utilizes is outside the purview of IGCR rules, which means that he can trade it to other person, he can manufacture it, he can do job work, everything. So that is outside the purview of the thing. So because
so can I?
Yeah, please
go on, sir. Sorry. So can I say that whatever disclosures are required in relation to job work generally under the IGCR apply to a situation where the importer itself is sending it to the job worker, which will not apply in the case of our sector because nominated agency will never do it. So that confusion, I think, is emerging because of that. So
yeah. If I can,
am I right to say that?
Yeah. If I can put it differently, when the notification says that importer has to undertake manufacture or provide output services, then importer is obligated to do this in the notification, and he can also avail job work to do that. Only in that situation, then whether he is doing the job work and details of job work, everything will come into place. But when the notification like UAE CEPA says it has to be given to TRQ holder, or 5758 says it will be supplied to an exporter who will do that, in all those cases, the job work column can be left blank. It is not applicable. If I can say it in that manner.
Right. So I think ED sir had asked a very important question which you answered as well. But one member has requested if broadly you can just touch upon the response again, which is in relation to the penal consequences on nominated agency if there is any violation by the jewelry manufacturer. So very briefly, because the member has requested.
Yeah. So again, to just say that if there is a duty to be demanded, it is still demanded to an importer who is a nominated agency in this case. But what IGCR rule does is that it gives importer enough reconciliation mechanism to see that the supply is the made. Let us say if there is a shipping bill which is there, he can, while he is filing the return, he will be in a position to say that shipping bill has been indeed filed. If there are multiple shipping bills, exporter can't give same shipping bill to multiple source. So those kind of malpractices which has been noticed by one or two exporters and that led to investigation, that could be avoided in this case. But importer would be in a position to respond, will be the person to whom the demand will be there, but he will have sufficient aid in his capacity to see that that are properly complied with, if I can put it in this manner. Samir, you want to add something?
No, sir, in this case, you made it quite right.
So there are two interesting questions that have come up. One is that practically in some instances, the jewelry essentially is ready. Okay, and the exporter needs to export it. And so against that, he books some gold with the nominated agency. Okay. So then whether with that import that is being made against which the corresponding jewelry exports may be, adjusted or offset, will there be any other requirement of correlation or end use condition associated with that?
In this case,
take this question.
Yes, it is, sir. In this case, correlation has to be done by the importer who is nominated agency, that whatever has been imported, against that equivalent amount of gold has been exported in the form of jewelry in terms of these many shipping bills. That can be reconciled through electronic portal.
So
And
those shipping bills, which, yeah, sure. Go on, sir. Sorry.
And if we see this transaction, the transaction would be like that. First, nominated agency will give intimation under IGCR1 form that I want to import such and such gold. After import, nominated agency will say through IGCR3 that whatever gold has been imported, I have distributed it to corresponding, let's say, exporter. Now, this details distribution of gold from nominated agency to exporter will not be through job work data. It will be through a separate form which has been introduced now as a supply to end user. And the only obligation that is with the exporter is to maintain these records at his ends while he is doing any kind of job work or something, which would not require on ongoing basis. Only when it is demanded by a jurisdictional customs field officer, then only. And after the export, he should be giving these details to nominated agency, and then nominated agency will file that against this shipping bills, this compliance has been fulfilled against the imports, and whatever the bond has been debited at the time of import, corresponding bond will get recredited equivalent to the export that has already been done, which has already been explained by Anand sir in terms of partial recrediting of the bond. That is the entire process.
Right, sir.
Just 1 minute, Supreme, just
yeah.
one. This is one issue, sir, on which the council represents, and we have got, see, it should be only quantity to quantity based. That is what you are, you are meaning. It will not be, like exact, like linking of what they have taken from the bank that is used or not. This should be very much clarified, because see what happens when a manufacturer or a jeweler deals with gold, they have in their stock, that stock can be exported, that stock can be sold also. So there is no linking of the exact gold what is taken from the bank. So that way it should be a quantity to quantity matching. That's all, sir, what you have meant, what I have understood.
Yes, in this aspect, I would like to say that we understand that gold is fungible. So we are not saying what gold has been imported, the same gold has to be used and exported in the form of jewelry. That's why the notification is quite clear, which says whenever the gold is imported, the equivalent amount of gold has to be there in exported jewelry. So it is possible that domestically procured gold may be used in jewelry, and that gold can be exported and the compliance can be made for the gold which has been imported.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. The other aspect is that, as we see it in terms of the IGCR rules, a prior intimation is required. As you mentioned, IGCR 1. So there one detail that has to be mentioned is details of end-use recipient. Now, one question that has come up is that at the time of import, at times bank or nominated agencies may not have the details of the counterparty as to who is going to buy it. So from that perspective, how will this compliance happen is the question.
So is it with respect to the UAE CEPA, or is it with respect to 56 and 57?
56 and 57, I presume. Yeah.
Yeah. So one, when it is with respect to, I'll explain both. One is when it is with respect to UAE CEPA, the nominated agencies will know that they who is an end-use recipient. That's how they will mention their TRQ holder, TRQ license in the bill of entry, and they will get a duty benefit as well, 1%, whatever it is. So they will know at that point in time before it comes. So the IGCR 1 is an intimation form, which means that there is no approval required from the officer. You can always go to your portal, log in, and if at all you want to supply to a new end-use recipient, you can always add that end-use recipient there, and you can make an import. Once you add and submit it, then that is considered as an intimation. Then no further approval is there. It is reflected in your portal, and then you can go ahead, quote that end-use recipient and the importer bill of entry. So in case of 56 and 57, if you know the details, before an import is made, you can always add it. In other cases, what if you see the IGCR form, especially I think part 5A, which will tell us the details of end use recipient to whom it has been supplied with. So before filing the returns, you should add that end use recipient and add these details when it is supplied. Let us say nominated agency has imported it. At the time, it is not known to whom they are going to supply it. But when supply is made and it is returned in the monthly statement, they have to add it in the IGCR 1, those end use recipient, and declare in the monthly statement that it has been supplied to so and so. I think that makes the procedure clear.
Sure. So basically, even if it is not added in IGCR 1, then on the monthly return, it can always be added, and that should be considered as compliance.
No, before filing your monthly
before
return,
supplying, it can be added. Yeah.
Before supplying it, please add to IGCR 1 and then supply it. That's it. Because it is an integration, you can always add it at any point in time after import. Yeah.
Sure. Understood. The next one is IGCR rule only for UAE CEPA or other imports also? Yeah, it applies to even other imports, even for us, except 56 and 57 is covered. So there's one question in relation to from someone from Yes Bank. Under para 4.4 of the circular number 18 of 2022, clarity regarding supply to TRQ holders, UAE CEPA supply of gold to TRQ holders who get job work done is not specifically mentioned, though the mention of the same is in para 4.5 for supply of gold to export of jewelry. So that is not mentioned, but the essence remains the same because it is explicitly clarified for 56 and 57, but it flows from the legislation and from the rule. So I think there's no doubt that it would not apply, and the speakers have already clarified that. Import of gold under TRQ from nominated agency can be allowed for job work, or same can be exported. Re-export of gold is what they are talking about.
Just 1 minute, Supreem. Yes Bank has one specific question. We know that they have already imported one consignment of under in UAE CEPA. However, as there are no procedures there, I think they are still with the stock of the gold. So they are telling that what procedures, compliances we need to do before and after the sale to the TRQ holder. That is what exactly the second part of the question is important.
Correct. No, so that second, I thought it pertains to DGFT again. So just avoiding those. But since you have highlighted that.
So if I can add, if I can add to that question by Yes Bank, in the 4.4 UAE CEPA, the last line, it has been clarified saying that importer shall follow IGCR procedure till it's supplied to an end use recipient and filing of monthly statement. So the job work which is after this one does not apply. So that's a clarity I think I can give to this one. But there is a specific case which we are also aware from S Bank. One consignment which has got imported, we'll have a bilateral with S Bank. Will guide them to resolve that issue regarding the consignment which was imported even before TRQ's issue. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sir. So coming to the next question. So as just mentioning, the question is that gold imported under TRQ can be allowed for job work, which is clear, or same can be exported. I mean, after manufacturing, it can be exported, or even otherwise, I don't see there is a bar. We have already clarified that. The next question is, I think that is answered adequately, so I'm not touching upon that.
Import by IIBX by qualified jeweler, that is what is being told basically. How the import will be interpreted by customs official in relation with IGCR notification. So this is one
it's
important.
Already told, yeah. Yeah. You want to get that addressed again, ED sir, that question?
So basically, what is being told is that, see, we are only talking about nominated agency. So they are now here talking that if a gold is imported by qualified jeweler through IIBX, whether the same kind of set of rules are applicable or not, I think they are trying to address that. So again, it may be reclarified a little better that for IIBX, the same rules is applicable or not.
Yes, in this case, qualified jewelers will be like nominated agency. So
Right.
qualified jewelers would be importer, and those rules would be applicable to them, IGCR rules.
So
So does that answer the
basically,
question?
the IIBX would step into the shoes of nominated agencies and will be directly liable in relation to the imports.
I would like to make it correct. IIBX would be an
Yeah.
exchange. So exchange would not be liable. Qualified jewelers who are purchasing gold from IIBX,
Okay.
those
Okay.
are actually the importers in the eyes of customs authorities. And
Right.
those IGCR rules which are applicable to importers will be applicable to qualified jewelers as well.
Directly, it will apply to qualified jewelers.
Yes.
So all the compliances under IGCR rules, intimation and everything will have to be done by them, which were otherwise being done by the nominated agency.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Moving to the next question. So when you say that the flow moving from exporter to the manufacturer or the job worker, my question here comes is, does the manufacturer necessarily export abroad or can use in the domestic market? So if this is pertaining to TRQ, I think it's adequately clarified. So if it is under TRQ, it can be disposed in any manner. So there's no end use restriction per se. Again, the other question pertains to nominated banks and their role as an importer. Is it limited to collecting information? I think we have already, dealt with the nominated agency's roles. So I'll just skip this. The next one is also in relation to IIBX, that is already answered. Who has to provide bond? So I think whatever bond has to be provided is by the nominated agency insofar as imports are being made under 56 and 57. So that's clear. Obviously, the nominated agency will have an arrangement with the jeweler where a back-to-back guarantee or something can be put in place, which is the practice that has been followed till now. Okay, so moving to the next one. Who has to submit Form 1, Form 2, Form 3 on line to customs? So I think, again, if it's 56, 57, the nominated agencies has to furnish these forms. If it is through the exchange that we discussed just now, then the qualified jewelers will have to do it. Again, there's a question I think that can be again discussed bilaterally. It's not Yes Bank, but someone has raised an issue that TRQ gold is not delivered by nominated agency after certificate is allotted by DGFT. So that I think can be taken up separately. The next question is in relation to a merchant exporter. They are saying that we have purchased finished gold jewelry and we have to export the gold jewelry to our overseas consignee. My question is, we have claim for, again, it's for drawback and road tape. I don't think we should, but just to answer it generally, even if you are procuring it from a manufacturer, you could be entitled to drawback and road tape is what my understanding is. It's not that you will have to be the manufacturer because it's, all India drawback which you are claiming. So which is applicable to goods across the board. Whether Customs Circular 27 of 2016 on the procedure of import of gold will also be amended with IGCR rules. I think that already has been clarified. There's some reference to the existing circular that will continue to apply insofar as the transactions between the nominated agencies and the jewelers are concerned. Again, the TRQ holder, whether it can give it for job work, that is clarified. They can do that. Presently, there is no one-to-one correlation required. Post IGCR rules, whether it will be required, you have adequately clarified that one-to-one correlation is not required per se. It's only in quantity terms that we will seek a correlation. I'm just skipping some questions which are not relevant, so I'm just taking time to read them.
Supreme, I
So
think Kunal has asked a question. A nominated agency once supplies to exporter may not have data regarding balance gold left with the job work.
Yeah, so nominated agency once supplies to exporter may not have data regarding balance gold left with job worker. But that is a record that has to be maintained by the jewelers, as we discussed, in terms of how much has been issued for manufacturing, what is the process loss, and what has eventually been exported. And that is a record that nominated agencies will have access to as and when they call for that. So unless there's something I have not understood, that is how I think it should be looked at, right?
Yeah, see, if nominated agency is due to an exporter, it is for an exporter to maintain all the records. Exporter will say whom to which job worker I've supplied and everything. So always nominated agency can ask to the exporter. Exporter will be in a position, should be in a position to give the details to nominated agency.
Right. Right. The next one is how can we claim the export? Can we claim part of import duty on gold by submitting relevant export docs as merchant exporter within time frame while we are exporting finished jewelry by purchasing from manufacturer retailers across pan India on GST sales? So I think if there is a procurement that has already happened domestically and exports have been made, I think the recourse is only replenishment, which is also a facilitation. The benefit is much lesser. In relation to replenishment, I had a question which I would put it across to both of you. Is that replenishment is as such a post-export benefit. You've already exported and you are seeking replenishment. So in relation to that, whether there is actually any need to apply IGCR per se, or the application is only procedural because it is just a supply to an end-use recipient who is a holder of that scrip or that authorization.
Well, in this case, there is also a need for reconciliation of whatever export has been made. And for that export, the equivalent amount of gold which needs to be replenished through imported duty-free gold. So you can see in normal scenario, the transaction is reconciliation of import which has happened with the export which will happen. Now, in this case, the reconciliation would be reverse. That export which has already taken place, and against those exports,
right,
what kind of imports you want as a duty-free to replenish it. So in this way, the reconciliation would happen.
Correct, because there's a benefit being conferred, even if it is post-export, still there has to be some system in place to monitor that the export on which replenishment is being claimed had occurred. So
correct.
Makes sense. Yeah. Moving to the next one. If we as an exporter, again, I think it is coming back to the question whether GST records are sufficient, but I'll just raise this. If we as an exporter buying gold from nominated agencies execute the export within the stipulated period and file and maintain records as per GST regulations, can we still be asked to provide details documents with regard to IGCR? If yes, under what circumstances? So I think obviously there is a mechanism where the authorities may, or the nominated agency may get back to you to seek details. You will only need to ensure that you maintain those details, so the details being maintained are adequate. Circumstances, obviously, that is discretionary. It could be a routine check, or if there is some intelligence, then obviously the authorities may seek those details from you. So Kunal Doshi has asked another question. He's saying that nominated agencies have customs attested invoice to verify which details will be filled by them. So I think he's referring to export documents that we file, and in relation to that, there's a customs attested invoice. So when the jewelry is exported, there is a custom attested invoice which has all particulars in terms of value addition and every other detail. So what he's saying is that that invoice itself can be a basis of filling in details required in the IGCR rules in relation to usage. So that can obviously help, and that can also be considered as a document that establishes the records are being maintained. So I think that goes without saying. In terms of IGCR forms, can we have a distinction between importer and the end user? I think that distinction is what has been created now. There is a clear demarcation as to who is an end user, or what is a specified end use, and who the importer is. And the clarifications also abundantly clarify as to how that will operate.
So here, Supreme, what Kunal Doshi is trying to address is that the job work details will not be available with the nominated agency. That is what he is wanting to clarify, and it should be very clear in the IGCR that nominated agencies will not be, responsible for distribution or keeping records of the job work. This is what I think he is trying a clarification.
Okay, that also makes sense, and we have already discussed that job work details are something that will be maintained internally and can be accessed by nominated agencies as an area.
I think, Mr. Rathavishnan, this can be clarified, because most people are asking the same thing, is that this job worker is the the exporter who get the gold from the nominated agency. But nominated agency should not be made responsible for keeping the records of the job worker, because he will not be having access to those records.
Yeah, so the intention, we have clarified also that nominated agencies need not have need not maintain the records of job worker, or second line or third line job worker. Those records are to be maintained by the exporter, who is an end use recipient. So as and when it is required, either nominated agencies or custom officers can ask an exporter. Exporter should be able to give that one. In the rules also, the obligations of end use recipient, that has been made clear, that no, the records are to be maintained by an exporter, and custom officer or nominated agencies can ask when required. So that is clear. I think you can read the rule. I'll come back on the exact rule, but that is a intention behind this one. Nominated agencies are not supposed to ask for keep a record of the job workers doing the manufacture.
Correct. So I think you're referring to Rule 9, where they are saying that in case of supply for replenishment or export against supply, the end user recipient shall maintain these details, which are prescribed therein. And job work related details are to be maintained by an importer, who, as an importer, is sending directly to a job worker, which is not even applicable to the gem and jewelry sector. So there's one question, again, that's quite simple. So what's being said is that whether this IGCR will apply to imports made prior to 1st October. No, I think it will apply, as you have clarified, only in relation to imports made post 1st October 2022. So again, there's a question on IIPX, so that has been already answered. So the other question is in relation to 56 of 2000. So under which there is this facilitation that import can be made directly also by an importer who receives goods or gold free of cost from the foreign buyer. So the question is, if the gold is imported by an exporter under supply from foreign buyer as per provision in the FTP, the exporter himself is the manufacturer. Can you please confirm that this does not violate the IGCR rule that the importer can't be the manufacturer himself? Or in this case, does the exporter need to follow any compliance documentation to comply with the IGCR rule? So there is no bar that the importer cannot be manufacturer himself. In fact, that was there from day one. In fact, now the amendments have been made to add further categories. So I don't think there's any bar, and the manufacturer in that case, who would also be the importer, will have to comply with the IGCR rules directly if the import is being made directly from the foreign buyer. Moving to the next one. I think it's GST related. We'll just skip that. So this question is coming again and again. So maybe I'll just ask you to also clarify whether qualified jewelers can service to TRQ holders for import and supply of gold to them under CEPA. My view is that it cannot happen because it has to be a direct import by the TRQ holder, and qualified jeweler who purchases from the exchange itself is an importer in that sense. Any one of you, Mr. Patil?
Okay, is there a question?
Yeah, so the question was, and it has been asked a number of times, is a qualified jeweler. Can the qualified jeweler service to TRQ holders for import and supply of gold to them under CEPA?
Currently, they can. The way I understand is like that there are three routes that gold can come into India. One is through banks nominated by RBI. Second is through nominated agencies, which are again nominated by DGFT. And third is through qualified jewelers, which are nominated by IFSCA. Now for qualified jewelers, only route is available through IIVX. So it can happen that qualified jewelers can themselves be a TRQ holder and manufacturer. In that case, in TRQ authorization, at the place of importer, qualified jewelers will write their name. And also as a TRQ holder, they can write their name, and they can be importer as well as manufacturer. Second case can be there that some other exporter may approach qualified jewelers to buy gold to import gold from them. In that case, they can put qualified jewelers as an importer and TRQ holder as their own name, who are the exporters, under TRQ authorization, and through that route they can get it under the IGCR rules.
Basically, they can have a joint TRQ license is what you are suggesting. Along with the qualified jeweler, the TRQ holder can collectively import it, is what?
Yeah, under the rule it is possible. But in fact, I asked this question to IFSCA, and they were under the opinion that this route we have ensured to increase supply of gold to qualified jewelers rather than going through nominated agency route. And in practice, it is very rare case that qualified jewelers will further supply to other manufacturers the gold which they are getting at 1% concessional rate. So they themselves would import and manufacture and export the jewelry or supply to domestic market. So there is a very less chance that qualified jewelers would supply that gold to another exporter, which is coming at 1% concessional duty rate.
Okay, but theoretically it is possible. Yeah,
yes.
I want to intervene here, not on this issue, but on the other issue. What is continuing is that, see, for any replenishment, that the book remains open till the money comes. The BRC, the bank relation certificate. So there are two events. One is that the exporter has taken the gold from the nominated agency. They have given to the job worker. The jewelry has come back and they have exported. And then after exporting, there is a gap. That means till the BRC comes, it remains open in the nominated agency, whatever in the portal. So it should not happen that till that time, see, the nominee agencies again will call that where is the gold, where is the gold. The exporter are telling that as per regulation, if that window remains open, then a customs officer or a nominee agency can still call that it is still open. You show that where you have given, where you issued with the job worker. So the exporter wants that once the export is done, because they have already accounted for the gold, the export has been done. For the BRC itself, it should not be kept open, and in the provision or in the regulation, this should be properly mentioned.
Okay, in this case, I would like to say that under FTP provisions, the export obligation for 56-57 remains open till three things: that export has been made. In this sense, shipping bill has to be submitted, invoice copy has to be submitted, and the third thing is remittance has happened through BRC. So if all three things are in place, then custom official can recredit this bond. So FTP itself says that these three things has to be there for closing of export obligation and related bond under it.
No, sir, that is okay. That part, exporter is not asking that you close the bond before that. What only they are asking that they should have, because just now it has been clarified that at any point of time, nominee agency or the customs official can ask that which job worker, etc., under whose custody the gold is there, etc., because there is a correlation. So if the export has been done, after that it should not be allowed, because till that time the BRC comes, it remains open in the. So this is the only clarification they want, that quantity-wise export has already been done. But as the BRC has not come, the bond is open. So that time itself, technically speaking, a customer can ask, show me which job worker, etc., the gold is there, etc. So this is the only thing he's asking.
Okay. In fact, to avoid this situation, we want to do electronic reconciliation in this sense that whatever the details are available, exporter and nominated agency can fill. That details about shipping bill and invoice is already there, so it would be available on the portal. So the only thing that remains to be reconciled is a BRC about the remittance. So as and when the BRC comes, he can mention, nominated agency as an importer can mention these details on IGCR. So the reconciliation would happen. So there is an opportunity that phase-wise details can be given by exporter and to nominated agency, and then nominated agency to customs official. So everything would be electronic, and information about particular import and related export would be visible to everyone, related party. Does that answer your question?
Yes, no, that is okay. See, I'll just explain you with example. Our nominated agency issued 2 kilo of gold to an exporter. So exporter distributes it to 20 job workers, and then after that 2 kilos of jewelry comes back and he exports. So after that, he should not be in the obligation for showing the job of record, because that is already accounted for. He has already sent it, issued it, because there are two ways that distribution is happening. So the exporter issuing to the job worker, then he has got back the thing and he has exported. With the job worker, his relationship is only giving the gold and getting back the jewelry, and he has paid him through the service charges, etc. But the exporter with nominee agency, the relationship with that, the 2 kilo of gold has to be exported and the money has to come back. So this is what is being asked, that once it is exported, between that and the money coming in, there is another 60 days or 90 days period when the money can come in. During that time, again, the job worker details should not be asked that where you have issued this, etc., because he has physically has already exported at that point of time. This is what they are telling you.
So basically what is being suggested is that once the physical exports have been done and that detail has been provided, then there should not be any going back. Then the only detail required further is BIRC, is what is being suggested.
Okay, we will clarify it later, but this
we can clarify
sure,
it later.
Yeah.
But essentially, only when there is any need for investigation, they will ask. Otherwise, nominated agency is normal. It is purely between nominated agency and the exporter to happen. So only when there are any things which are to be checked, custom officer will do. Routinely, there will not be any check by the custom officer to see that it is done.
Right.
Sir, is there some time period within which, if at all the custom officers have to verify, they will verify, or they can come after 2 years, 3 years?
Normally the record keeping is for 5 years period. So yeah, if there are any supplies, it is same as GST, because we are not asking for anything new. In GST, you will have to keep for 5+1. So that's the same period where you will have the records, and there is nothing which is prescribed additionally with apart from GST. So those records will suffice.
Mhm.
I think,
Yeah.
Supreme, you go through this. I think more or less generally we have discussed all these things. Still, if there are any questions, we'll clarify from the officers, and then we can come back. That is not an issue.
Correct. So we can conclude by. We can conclude then.
Yes, we can conclude, and
Mhm.
we need to thank the honorable officers, Mr. Anand Radhakrishnan, and so this is where we stand. That it is such an informative session, and you have taken all the pains of trying to answer the questions. So,
Yeah.
thank you, sir. Thank you very much for joining with us.
Thank you, sir, for taking time on a Saturday and being with us, spending more than what we had expected time. It's almost 2 hours we have spent on this very important topic, and I hope and I'm sure almost all the doubts of the exporter members have been clarified. And so we thank you and Mr. Patil for sparing the time today. And if at all, as our ED, Mr. Sabyasachi has said, if at all there are some more queries, we will get back to you and get clarified in due course of time. So thank you for today, sir. Thank you. And thanks all the participants who had come here and who had raised questions which have also enlightened us on the problems which they were envisaging. And with the answers given by the honorable speakers, I think their queries are all rectified now. So thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Supreme, and thank you, Sabyasachi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Really.